Detective Rachel Monroe had always been a beacon of strength in her city's police department. For more than a decade, she worked tirelessly to keep her community safe, earning respect not only from her colleagues, but also from the people she swore to protect. Known for her sharp mind and relentless dedication, Rachel was the kind of officer who never gave up no matter how tough the case. Her partner through it all was Titan, a large, powerful German shepherd with a coat as dark as midnight and eyes full of fierce loyalty. Titan wasn't just a police dog. He was Rachel's closest companion and trusted friend. Together, they'd solved countless cases, facing danger side by side. Titan had saved Rachel's life more times than anyone could count, and in return, Rachel had given him a second chance after he was retired from active duty. But on a chilly autumn morning, everything Rachel believed in and everything she had built began to unravel. It started with a knock on her door before dawn. Two officers in plain clothes waited outside her apartment, their faces unreadable. Rachel, still groggy, felt a chill run down her spine. Without explanation, they informed her she was under investigation for tampering with evidence in a case she'd worked on months earlier, a high-profile case that had rocked the city. The accused was the son of a wealthy businessman, a young man sentenced to prison for a violent crime. Rachel had been the lead detective, but new claims suggested she'd altered evidence, leading to a wrongful conviction. The allegations were shocking, and Rachel immediately knew the stakes were far higher than just her career. They were a threat to everything she valued. Word spread fast. By midday, the media was camped outside the police station, cameras flashing and microphones thrust in her direction. Reporters asked for statements, but Rachel remained silent, overwhelmed by the sudden storm. Friends and fellow officers expressed disbelief. Many stood by her, convinced she was innocent, but others kept their distance. Wary of the scandal, the department suspended her pending the outcome of the investigation. Titan, sensing her distress, refused to leave her side. Wherever Rachel went, Titan followed, a silent guardian watching over her. The case against Rachel was built on a few key pieces of evidence: digital files, witness statements, and physical proof from the crime scene. Prosecutors claimed she had deleted surveillance footage and manipulated reports to ensure the young man's guilt. Rachel vehemently denied it, insisting she had done everything by the book. As the investigation progressed, the city divided. On social media, hashtags like #FreeRachelMonroe trended, with thousands rallying for her innocence. Meanwhile, detractors argued that no one should be above the law, not even a decorated detective. Rachel spent her nights poring over files, trying to find any lead that could clear her name. Titan would lie at her feet, offering comfort during the darkest hours. But doubts crept in. Had someone betrayed her? Was this a setup by someone within the force, or a powerful figure trying to cover their own tracks? The trial was set to begin in just a few weeks. Rachel's attorney warned her that the prosecution had powerful resources, and the judge appeared strict. The courtroom was expected to be packed every day, with the city watching closely. Rachel's family attended every hearing, their faces tight with worry. Her mother held her hand tightly, whispering words of encouragement, while her younger sister posted updates online, fighting to keep hope alive. That the night before the trial, Rachel sat alone in her small apartment, Titan resting his head on her lap. She stared at the badge pinned to her dresser, a symbol of everything she once believed in. The woman who had dedicated her life to justice now faced the unimaginable, a sentence that could end it all. "I won't give up," Rachel whispered, voice trembling but firm. "For the truth, for Titan, for everyone who believes in me." Outside, the city lights flickered, oblivious to the storm about to break. The courthouse buzzed with a mixture of excitement, tension, and anticipation as the trial of Detective Rachel Monroe began. Cameras lined the steps outside, reporters jockeyed for position, and townsfolk filled every seat in the gallery. The air was thick with whispers, some hopeful, others cynical. No one wanted to miss a single moment. Inside, Rachel sat calmly at the defendant's table, flanked by her attorney, Mark Harris. Titan lay quietly at her feet, his dark eyes scanning the room, sensing the importance of the day. Despite the heavy weight pressing on her chest, Rachel forced herself to breathe deeply and focus. This trial would decide everything. From the moment the prosecution rose, the courtroom shifted. The lead prosecutor, a sharp-tongued woman named Angela Reyes, painted a grim picture. She described Rachel as someone who had betrayed her badge, tampering with crucial evidence to ensure a conviction. Reyes presented files that showed missing surveillance footage and altered police reports. Her tone was cold and confident, leaving little room for doubt. Witnesses called by the prosecution included fellow officers and forensic analysts, many of whom claimed inconsistencies in Rachel's casework. One after another, they testified that the evidence was tampered with and manipulated, implicating Rachel in a conspiracy that stunned the city. Each witness chipped away at Rachel's reputation, and the jury listened intently. But the defense fought back with equal fervor. Mark Harris called friends, family, and colleagues to the stand, people who vouched for Rachel's integrity, her years of service, and her commitment to the truth. He highlighted gaps in the prosecution's evidence and questioned the reliability of the witnesses, some of whom had unclear motives. Despite the defense's efforts, the trial quickly became a battle of narratives. The prosecution painted Rachel as a rogue officer, while the defense argued she was the victim of a sinister plot. The media seized on every detail, feeding the public's appetite for drama and justice. Outside the courtroom, social media was ablaze. Supporters organized rallies, wearing T-shirts with Rachel's face and the words "Justice for Monroe." Others voiced doubts about her innocence, fueled by the prosecution's narrative. The city was split down the middle. Titan became an unlikely symbol of hope during the trial. Every day, the loyal dog sat by Rachel's side, eyes never leaving hers. Observers noted how calm and attentive he was, almost as if he understood the stakes. Many found comfort in his presence, a reminder of Rachel's humanity amid the harsh courtroom drama. During one tense cross-examination, Rachel was asked to recount the night of the case that started it all. Her voice was steady, but strained, as she described every detail she could remember: the long hours, the pressure, the overwhelming responsibility. She insisted she had done nothing wrong, and that the evidence against her was fabricated. "Detective Monroe, did you ever alter the evidence in this case?" The prosecutor asked, her eyes sharp. "No," Rachel replied firmly. "I would never sacrifice the truth or my integrity." The judge, a stern man named Thomas Caldwell, maintained order but did not hide his seriousness. He reminded everyone that this trial was about justice and that the jury must remain impartial. His gaze often settled on Rachel, a silent reminder that the stakes couldn't be higher. As days turned into weeks, the emotional toll became evident. Rachel's defense team worked tirelessly, uncovering small discrepancies and challenging key testimonies. But with each session, the prosecution's case seemed to gain momentum. The jury grew more attentive, some taking notes fervently. One afternoon, a surprise witness came forward, a forensic technician who admitted to feeling pressured by higher-ups to adjust certain findings. His testimony shook the courtroom, casting doubt on the entire investigation. For a moment, hope flickered. However, the prosecution quickly discredited the witness, calling his credibility into question. The fight for the truth continued with no clear winner in sight. Through it all, Titan never wavered. He stayed close to Rachel, offering quiet comfort during breaks. Friends and supporters whispered that the dog's calm strength was the only steady force in the chaos. Late one evening, after a long day in court, Rachel sat alone in the courthouse lobby. Titan rested his head on her lap, and she stroked his fur, drawing strength from his presence. "This can't be how it ends," she whispered. "There has to be a way to prove the truth." Outside, the city lights twinkled through the windows, but inside, Rachel knew the real battle was just beginning. The verdict loomed ahead, and with it, a fate that could change her life forever. The courtroom was packed on the day the jury was set to deliver its verdict. The air felt heavier than ever, as if everyone present sensed the gravity of the moment. Rachel Monroe sat at the defendant's table, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes focused but shadowed with worry. Titan lay quietly at her feet, his ears perked, as if he could sense the tension rising. For weeks, the city had held its breath. Supporters had rallied, urging for justice and truth, while others whispered doubts about Rachel's innocence. The trial had become more than a legal battle. It was a fight for reputation, for faith in the system, and for the very future of a woman who had dedicated her life to law enforcement. The jury filed back into the courtroom, their expressions unreadable. The judge called the court to order and asked for the foreperson to read the verdict aloud. Silence fell over the room. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Detective Rachel Monroe, guilty on all counts." The words hit like a hammer. Collective gasp rippled through the spectators. Some gasped in shock, others whispered prayers or wiped away tears. Rachel's lawyer's face tightened with disbelief. Titan let out a low whine, rising slightly to press his head against Rachel's knee, offering comfort. Rachel felt her world tilt. Years of service, of sacrifices, and battles fought in the shadows, all dismissed in a single moment. The judge then spoke, his voice steady but grave. "Considering the severity of the crimes and the evidence presented, this court sentences Detective Rachel Monroe to death." The room froze. Murmurs erupted, voices clashing in disbelief and outrage. Several spectators rose to their feet in stunned silence. Some covered their mouths, unable to process what they had just heard. Rachel closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath to steady herself. The sentence was brutal, unexpected, and devastating. Death, the ultimate punishment. For a woman many still believed was innocent. Her mind raced. How could this be happening? How had the system she trusted turned its back on her? Her defense attorney whispered urgently beside her, "We'll appeal. We'll fight this." But for now, the sentence stood. Titan remained at her side, his steady presence the only anchor in the storm. His dark eyes met Rachel's, filled with unwavering loyalty, as if silently promising he would never abandon her. No matter what. Outside the courtroom, the reaction was explosive. Reporters clamored to capture the moment, while crowds gathered, divided between shock and anger. The story dominated headlines, sparking heated debates about justice and corruption. Many people began to question the fairness of the trial. Had Rachel been framed? Had someone powerful manipulated the evidence behind the scenes? The possibility stirred whispers of conspiracy, sending ripples through the community. Rachel's family was devastated. Her mother broke down in tears, while her younger sister rallied supporters, determined to clear Rachel's name. Friends visited her in custody, offering words of hope and solidarity, reminding her she was not alone. Behind bars, Rachel struggled with the crushing weight of the verdict. But every time despair threatened to overwhelm her, she thought of Titan, the dog who had been with her through every triumph and trial. His steadfast loyalty reminded her that she still had a reason to fight. Meanwhile, Titan's behavior grew restless. The once calm and composed dog now paced in their small visiting room, occasionally nudging a file or document Rachel's attorney had brought. His unusual focus on certain papers puzzled everyone. The defense team began to take notice. If Titan was reacting to something hidden in those documents, maybe there was more to the story than the court had heard. Could a new clue lie buried in the evidence, overlooked and forgotten? As Rachel faced the bleak future ahead, a spark of hope remained, one born not from the courtroom or legal arguments, but from the silent instincts of her loyal German shepherd. In that moment, while many believed the battle was lost, Titan was quietly leading the way toward a truth that could still change everything. The days after the sentencing passed slowly for Rachel Monroe. Confined to a small room in the detention center, her thoughts churned endlessly, not only about her fate, but about the truth she was certain had yet to be revealed. And through it all, Titan stayed loyally by her side during every allowed visit, his presence a balm to her anxious mind. But something was different. Titan's usual calm demeanor had shifted. Instead of resting quietly, he began pacing restlessly. During their meetings, his keen nose sniffing at every corner, every item Rachel's attorney brought to her. More than once, Titan fixed his intense gaze on a dusty, unassuming folder sitting on a side table. A folder no one had paid much attention to before. Rachel's lawyer, Mark Harris, noticed the strange behavior immediately. He knew Titan had a reputation for detecting things humans overlooked. Curious, Mark picked up the folder and carefully opened it. Inside, he found old case files, including some audio recordings from the night in question. At first glance, they seemed like routine evidence, but one recording caught his attention. A grainy, barely audible tape that hadn't been highlighted during the trial. Mark played the recording on his phone speaker. The courtroom noises faded, replaced by hushed voices talking quietly, nervously, between two men. It was unclear at first, but soon, certain words became unmistakable. "They want us to stick to the story, no matter what," one voice said. "We can't afford to change anything, or it's all over for us." The other voice answered, "I know, but if anyone finds out we lied, we're finished. We should have never agreed to this." Mark's eyes widened. He replayed the audio several times, then carefully compared the voices to testimonies from the trial. The men speaking were two witnesses who had provided critical statements against Rachel, the very ones whose accounts had swayed the jury. This was huge. It suggested these witnesses had lied under pressure, possibly to protect someone else, or cover up the truth. Mark rushed to Rachel with the news, her eyes filled with cautious hope. "If this recording is real and admissible, it could prove my innocence," she said softly. "We have to act fast." The defense team immediately filed an emergency motion with the court, requesting that the new evidence be reviewed. They argued that the recording exposed serious misconduct and undermined the entire prosecution's case. Meanwhile, Titan seemed to understand the importance of what was unfolding. His energy shifted from restless pacing to focused alertness, as if encouraging everyone to keep going. The judge, Thomas Caldwell, was initially skeptical. But after hearing the defense's argument and reviewing a sample of the recording, he agreed to grant a hearing to examine the evidence further. The city was stunned once again. News outlets buzzed with the unexpected twist. Supporters of Rachel saw it as a sign that justice might still be within reach. On the day of the emergency hearing, the courtroom was packed once more. Titan sat faithfully by Rachel's side, his presence a comforting reminder of loyalty and hope. The defense played the audio recording for the judge and jury. The voices, now clear and undeniable, exposed the plot behind the false testimonies. Then, something unexpected happened. Titan, usually calm and reserved during proceedings, suddenly stood up and charged toward a man sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom. A former officer who had testified against Rachel. The man froze, eyes wide with shock. Titan's intense stare seemed to pierce right through him. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on the unexpected confrontation. Under the weight of the new evidence and Titan's unrelenting gaze, the man broke down. He confessed to his role in fabricating key parts of his testimony, revealing a larger scheme to frame Rachel and protect others involved. The room erupted in stunned whispers and gasps. Rachel's defense team exchanged looks of disbelief and cautious relief. For the first time in weeks, hope seemed real. Rachel reached down, gently scratching Titan behind his ears. "You did it, boy," she whispered. "You never gave up on." The courtroom was left to digest the shock and the possibility that everything they believed about the case might change. The days after the sentencing passed slowly for Rachel Monroe. Confined to a small room in the detention center, her thoughts churned endlessly, not only about her fate, but about the truth she was certain had yet to be revealed. And through it all, Titan stayed loyally by her side during every allowed visit, his presence a balm to her anxious mind. But something was different. Titan's usual calm demeanor had shifted. Instead of resting quietly, he began pacing restlessly during their meetings, his keen nose sniffing at every corner, every item Rachel's attorney brought to her. More than once, Titan fixed his intense gaze on a dusty, unassuming folder sitting on a side table, a folder no one had paid much attention to before. Rachel's lawyer, Mark Harris, noticed this strange behavior immediately. He knew Titan had a reputation for detecting things humans overlooked. Curious, Mark picked up the folder and carefully opened it. Inside, he found old case files, including some audio recordings from the night in question. At first glance, they seemed like routine evidence, but one recording caught his attention. A grainy, barely audible tape that hadn't been highlighted during the trial. Mark played the recording on his phone speaker. The courtroom noises faded, replaced by hushed voices talking quietly, nervously, between two men. It was unclear at first, but soon, certain words became unmistakable. "They want us to stick to the story, no matter what," one voice said. "We can't afford to change anything, or it's all over for us." The other voice answered, "No, but if anyone finds out we lied, we're finished." "We should have never agreed to this." Mark's eyes widened. He replayed the audio several times, then carefully compared the voices to testimonies from the trial. The men speaking were two witnesses who had provided critical statements against Rachel, the very ones whose accounts had swayed the jury. This was huge. It suggested these witnesses had lied under pressure, possibly to protect someone else, or cover up the truth. Mark rushed to Rachel with the news, her eyes filled with cautious hope. "If this recording is real and admissible, it could prove my innocence," she said softly. "We have to act fast." The defense team immediately filed an emergency motion with the court, requesting that the new evidence be reviewed. They argued that the recording exposed serious misconduct and undermined the entire prosecution's case. Meanwhile, Titan seemed to understand the importance of what was unfolding. His energy shifted from restless pacing to focused alertness, as if encouraging everyone to keep going. The judge, Thomas Caldwell, was initially skeptical, but after hearing the defense's argument and reviewing a sample of the recording, he agreed to grant a hearing to examine the evidence further. The city was stunned once again. News outlets buzzed with the unexpected twist. Supporters of Rachel saw it as a sign that justice might still be within reach. On the day of the emergency hearing, the courtroom was packed once more. Titan sat faithfully by Rachel's side, his presence a comforting reminder of loyalty and hope. The defense played the audio recording for the judge and jury. The voices, now clear and undeniable, exposed the plot behind the false testimonies. Then, something unexpected happened. Titan, usually calm and reserved during proceedings, suddenly stood up and charged toward a man sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom. A former officer who had testified against Rachel. The man froze, eyes wide with shock. Titan's intense stare seemed to pierce right through him. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on the unexpected confrontation. Under the weight of the new evidence and Titan's unrelenting gaze, the man broke down. He confessed to his role in fabricating key parts of his testimony, revealing a larger scheme to frame Rachel and protect others involved. The room erupted in stunned whispers and gasps. Rachel's defense team exchanged looks of disbelief and cautious relief. For the first time in weeks, hope seemed real. Rachel reached down, gently scratching Titan behind his ears. "You did it, boy?" she whispered. "You never gave up on." The courtroom was left to digest the shock and the possibility that everything they believed about the case might change. With the conviction overturned and a new trial scheduled, Rachel Monroe's life shifted into high gear once again. The months ahead would test her resilience, her spirit, and the strength of her bond with Titan. But after the devastating sentence and the shocking confession, Rachel was more determined than ever to prove her innocence and expose the corruption that had nearly destroyed her. The new trial brought with it a fresh wave of media attention. Every development was closely watched, every detail scrutinized. Rachel was no longer just a detective accused of wrongdoing. She had become a symbol of perseverance and justice. Yet beneath the headlines, the stakes were higher than ever. Powerful forces were still at play, and the fight for truth was far from over. Rachel and her attorney, Mark Harris, spent long hours reviewing the case files, gathering new evidence, and interviewing witnesses. They focused on the inconsistencies that had been exposed during the previous trial and uncovered new leads pointing to the real perpetrators behind the conspiracy. Titan, ever the silent guardian, remained by Rachel's side through it all. At the training facility, he underwent special sessions to hone his skills in detecting subtle scents and clues that could prove vital. Rachel often joked that Titan was the best detective she knew, and in many ways, she was right. The defense team also enlisted the help of forensic experts to analyze the evidence with cutting-edge technology. They aimed to dismantle the prosecution's case piece by piece and rebuild a story that aligned with the truth. But the prosecution was not idle. Led by Angela Reyes, who had earned a reputation for being relentless and sharp, they prepared to fight back hard. Reyes was determined to salvage her case and maintain the conviction, convinced that Rachel was guilty, despite the recent setbacks. In private meetings, Rachel often felt the weight of the opposition closing in. Threatening phone calls and subtle warnings reminded her that the forces against her were powerful and well-connected. Yet, with Titan's unwavering loyalty and Mark's steadfast support, Rachel found strength. One evening, as Rachel reviewed documents late into the night, Titan suddenly stood alert, ears pricked and eyes fixed on the doorway. Rachel followed his gaze just as a shadow moved outside the window. The sudden sense of danger was unmistakable. "Stay close, boy," she whispered, placing a reassuring hand on Titan's head. This was no longer just a courtroom battle. It was a fight for their very safety. That the tension escalated further when an anonymous source reached out to Rachel's legal team, offering critical information about the true masterminds behind the framing. The source claimed there was a network within the police department and city government orchestrating the plot. A conspiracy designed to silence Rachel and protect influential figures. With this new lead, Rachel's team launched a covert investigation. They knew exposing such corruption could shake the entire city's foundation. But the risks were immense. Throughout the process, Titan's role became even more vital. His keen senses helped detect hidden dangers and uncover evidence that human eyes might miss. More than once, his instinct saved Rachel from harm during late-night meetings and stackouts. Meanwhile, the city remained divided. Some hailed Rachel as a hero wronged by the system, while others remained skeptical, influenced by the prosecution's persistent narrative. On the eve of the new trial, Rachel stood before a mirror, clad in her plain clothes. She reached down to pat Titan, who sat patiently at her feet. "This time, we'll show them the truth," she said softly. Titan's tail thumped against the floor, a quiet promise that whatever came next, he would be there, loyal and fearless. The courtroom was ready to witness a battle unlike any before, one where truth, loyalty, and courage would collide. The day of the new trial dawned gray and heavy, a reflection of the storm brewing inside the courthouse. Rachel Monroe arrived early, dressed simply, but with a determined fire in her eyes. Titan walked beside her, calm and steady as ever, drawing quiet respect from the other officers and courtroom staff. The courtroom was packed once again. The city's attention was riveted on this case that had become more than just a trial. It was a symbol of justice, truth, and betrayal. Supporters gathered in the gallery, while the press clamored for every detail. The prosecution, led by Angela Reyes, entered with a confident air, but there was a hint of tension beneath her composed exterior. She knew this trial would be different. The new evidence had changed the game, and the confession from the previous hearing had shaken her team. Mark Harris, Rachel's attorney, presented the new case with precision and passion. He began by recounting the flaws in the original trial, the coerced testimonies, the suppressed evidence, and the cover-up orchestrated by powerful players behind the scenes. The jury listened intently, some nodding as the pieces started to fall. Into place Rachel sat quietly, her heart pounding. She kept Titan close, feeling the dog's unwavering presence calm her nerves. The defense called new witnesses, including the forensic technician who had first spoken out, and the anonymous source who had uncovered the conspiracy. Their testimonies were compelling and detailed, exposing the extent of the corruption and the lengths taken to frame Rachel. The prosecution tried to counter with their own witnesses, but the foundation of their case had crumbled. Several key figures were discredited on cross-examination, their motives and credibility questioned. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted palpably, and came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Rachel took the stand. She spoke with honesty and strength, recounting her experience as a detective, the pressure she had faced, and her commitment to justice. Her voice was steady, yet filled with emotion. "I have served this city with honor," she said. "I never tampered with evidence or betrayed my oath. The truth was hidden from you, but today I stand before you to tell you what really happened." The courtroom was silent, hanging on every word. Titan sat beside the stand, eyes locked on Rachel. At one point, Rachel looked down and gave him a reassuring smile, finding courage in their bond. The prosecution's closing arguments were passionate, trying to sway the jury, but the damage had been done. The defense's case was compelling, and the truth had finally come to light. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. "We find the defendant, Detective Rachel Monroe, not guilty on all charges." A wave of relief and applause swept through the courtroom. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes as the weight of weeks of fear and uncertainty lifted. Titan barked softly, tail wagging, as Rachel embraced her attorney and supporters, but the victory was bittersweet. Rachel knew the scars of the trial would linger, the betrayal, the lost time, and the fight to rebuild her life and career. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, chanting Rachel's name. News cameras captured the emotional moment as Rachel thanked her supporters and vowed to continue fighting for justice. Yet, amid the triumph, there was one question that haunted Rachel. Who else was involved in the conspiracy, and how deep did it go? With Titan by her side, Rachel knew she would find the answers. The battle for truth was far from over, But this courtroom showdown was a victory they would never forget. The courtroom's thunderous applause had barely settled when Rachel Monroe stepped outside into the sunlight, her heart pounding with relief and hope. After months of struggle, betrayal, and uncertainty, she was finally free, cleared of all charges, and vindicated in the eyes of the law. Beside her, Titan stood proud and attentive, his tail wagging gently, as if he knew this victory belonged as much to him as to Rachel. Their bond had carried them through the darkest hours, and now it was stronger than ever. Rachel's supporters surrounded her, cheering and embracing her. Friends, family, and even strangers who had followed the story offered congratulations and words of encouragement. The city that once doubted her now celebrated her as a symbol of resilience and courage. Rachel's mind was already looking forward. The trial had been only one battle in a larger war, a war against corruption that had almost destroyed everything she held dear. "I'm not done," Rachel told her lawyer, Mark Harris, as they walked away from the courthouse. "There's still more to uncover," Mark nodded. "We have new leads and witnesses. The network behind this runs deep, but now we have the momentum." As the days passed, Rachel worked tirelessly to rebuild her career. The police department welcomed her back with cautious respect, recognizing the injustice she had endured. Some colleagues who had distanced themselves reached out with apologies and support. Yet, the fight against corruption was far from over. Rachel joined a special task force dedicated to rooting out the dishonest officials and officers who had tried to frame her. Her experience gave her insight and determination few could match. Through it all, Titan remained her steadfast partner. Whether on long stackouts or quiet evenings at home, his presence was a constant reminder of loyalty, trust, and unconditional love. One afternoon, Rachel sat in her office, reviewing a new case file. Titan lay at her feet, ears perked as always. Phone buzzed with a message from an anonymous informant, someone who had worked within the corrupt network and was now willing to talk. It was the breakthrough Rachel had been waiting for. She smiled, feeling a surge of hope. The path ahead would be difficult, but with the truth on her side and Titan by her side, she was ready. Reflecting on the journey, Rachel realized that the trial had changed her. She was no longer just a cop. She was a fighter for justice, a beacon for those silenced by fear or corruption. And Titan? He was more than a dog. He was a hero in his own right, a loyal guardian who had defied the odds to save the woman who had saved so many others. Together, they had faced death sentences, lies, and betrayal, and emerged stronger, united by an unbreakable bond. As the sun set over the city skyline, Rachel whispered to Titan, "This is just the beginning, boy. We've got a lot of work to do." Titan barked softly in agreement, ready to face whatever came next. For Rachel Monroe and her loyal German shepherd, the future was theirs to shape, a future built on truth, justice, and the unshakable power of loyalty.